Picture a worker in Caracas. She has a contract. That contract promises her a Christmas bonus worth 3 months of wages. This year, that bonus will pay her about $1. Not $1 an hour, $1. That is the whole bonus. Now look at the other end of the same economy. Since January, around $13 billion of Venezuelan oil money has moved through accounts the United States government supervises. Reporters have traced about 300 million of it arriving in Caracas. 13 billion out, 300 million confirmed in. That gap is not an accounting error. That gap is the story of Venezuela in 2026. You are listening to the Veritas Brief from Veritas Europea. We are a reader-funded publication. We take our time and we show our working. Today we are going to Venezuela. 8 months ago, American Special Forces took a sitting head of state out of his bedroom. They flew him to New York to face drug charges. His deputy took power 2 days later. Since then, Venezuelan oil has started flowing again. The economy has started growing again. And Washington has taken control of the money. We want to work out what that bargain has actually bought. And we want to work out who it has bought it for. We have spent the past week inside congressional testimony, Treasury licenses, and central bank releases. This will take about 20 minutes. Let us start on the 3rd of January. On the 3rd of January, American Special Forces entered a military compound in Caracas. They found Nicolás Maduro asleep. They arrested him and his wife. They flew them out of the country. By morning, Venezuela had no president. The Supreme Court moved the following day. It handed the office to the Vice President, Delcy Rodríguez. On the 5th, she took the oath. Her brother Jorge administered it. Jorge Rodríguez runs the National Assembly. So a court appointed her. Her brother swore her in. No Venezuelan voted for any part of that sequence. So who is Delcy Rodríguez? She is 57. She trained as a lawyer. She has spent 2 decades inside Chavismo. Her father led a student movement on the Venezuelan left. State security forces arrested him in 1976 and killed him in custody. She was 7 years old. She rose through Hugo Chávez's government. She served Maduro as foreign minister, then as vice president. For years, she defended that government against accusations of drug trafficking and stolen elections. And then, within days of Maduro's capture, she offered Washington an agenda of cooperation. Here's the thing. Foreign diplomats had always read her differently from the hardliners. Christopher Hernandez Roy, at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, described her as a pragmatist. She understood the oil sector. She had spent years courting foreign investors. That is precisely why Washington picked her. Marco Rubio needed somebody already inside the government who would say yes. He found her. Now we come to the part most coverage skips. Washington did not simply lift sanctions on Venezuela. Washington built something new. On the 6th of January, Trump announced a 50 million barrel oil arrangement. Then came Executive Order 14373. That order created something called Foreign Government Deposit Funds inside the United States Treasury. Listen to how that works. The money belongs to Venezuela. The United States holds it. And the Secretary of State tells the Treasury when to release it. Rubio explained the mechanics to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on the 28th of January. Caracas would submit a budget request every month. Washington would approve it or refuse it. Rubio called the structure, and we quote, simply a way to divide revenue. He framed it as temporary. We want to be precise about why this matters, because the distinction is easy to miss. Sanctions restrict transactions. This restricts cash flow. Those are completely different instruments. Under the old sanctions, Venezuela still sold oil. It sold discounted barrels to Chinese refiners, and it kept the proceeds. Under this system, Venezuela exports freely and cannot touch most of the money. So Washington now holds a lever over the payroll of a country of 28 million people. It can slow pensions. It can slow public salaries. It can slow imports of food and medicine. It can do all of that without firing a shot. And look at the fine print on the licenses themselves, because this is where it gets interesting. Treasury rebuilt the legal plumbing in stages through the spring. In June, it consolidated everything into one framework. That framework names the companies who may operate. BP, Chevron, Eni, Repsol, Shell, Morel, and Prom. It also carries a geopolitical filter. The licenses exclude counterparties in Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, and China. And they require American law to govern contracts with PDVSA. Disputes resolve in American courts. Read that again. Contracts over Venezuelan oil between Venezuela and a foreign firm settled under American law. So Washington did not lift sanctions. Washington rewrote the commercial rules of Venezuelan oil in its own favor. James Story served as American ambassador to Venezuela under both Trump and Biden. He described the arrangement to Time magazine in July. They are doing everything that we ask them to do. And they are. Rodriguez consults Rubio on domestic appointments, including her choice of defense minister. The two speak nearly every day. Officials in Caracas have a nickname for the arrangement. They call it the Rodrigato. So where does the money actually go? The honest answer is that almost nobody outside the administration can tell you. The Council on Foreign Relations tried to work it out. Roxana Vigil ran that analysis. Her background matters here. She advised the Treasury's Sanctions Office. Before that, she ran Andean affairs at the National Security Council. She had to use tanker tracking data because no official figures exist. In the first 4 months, roughly 100 million barrels left Venezuela. She valued them at about $8 billion. The monthly figures climbed steeply. January produced around $600 million. April alone produced about $3.7 billion. Vigil found a process marked by, in her words, no transparency and minimal oversight. Then, in July, the Financial Times put a larger number on the table. Around $13 billion had moved through the arrangement. Reporters could trace roughly 300 million arriving in Caracas. Now, that gap has explanations. Some money pays for oil operations. Some sits in treasury accounts. Some funds the Venezuelan state directly. We want to be fair about that. But here is our problem. We cannot verify any of it, and neither can Congress. Look at what officials have actually said on the record. In January, Rubio told senators that 300 million had reached Caracas through an account in Qatar. Another 200 million was still sitting offshore. The following month, Energy Secretary Chris Wright said the full 500 million had arrived. In April, a State Department witness told Congress that Washington had authorized about $3 billion. That same witness could not say how much remained in the accounts. 3 officials, 3 different pictures of the same money. And the auditors? Rubio admitted in January that no audit process existed yet. By April, a witness told Congress that KPMG would run quarterly audits. He could not say when the reports would appear. We recorded this episode in late August. We have found no published audit. One more detail, and we think it deserves more attention than it has had. Somebody has to physically sell those barrels. Washington hired commodity traders to do it. The first 2 were Vitol and Trafigura. Both firms carry histories of bribery cases tied to oil sales. Rubio told Congress they were a short-term fix. 5 months later, both remained involved. A third trader has since joined them. Democratic lawmakers have asked the Government Accountability Office to audit the whole system. Senators Schiff and Schumer introduced a bill to force it. Most Republicans have stayed quiet on the money. Some have pressed instead for an election date. We are going to pause there for a moment. Everything you have heard so far came from primary documents, congressional testimony, treasury licenses, central bank releases, tanker tracking data. That work takes time, and nobody pays us to do it. No advertiser, no sponsor, no government. Readers pay for it. That is the whole model. So here is our ask, and it costs you nothing. Go to veritaseuropea.com and put in your email address. Everything we publish stays free to read. No paywall, no meter, no locked articles. You get the full piece behind this episode with every source linked straight to your inbox. And if you find that our work earns it, you can become a member. Membership is not a subscription that unlocks anything. It is patronage. Members fund the reporting that stays free for everybody else. One email address. That is all we are asking for today. veritaseuropea.com. Right. Back to Caracas. We should be straight with you about something. The production recovery is real. It genuinely happened. In January, Venezuela pumped around 1 million barrels a day. By July, OPEC's secondary sources put output at 1.117 million barrels a day. PDVSA now targets 1.245 million by the end of this month. The Department of Energy gave Semaphore its own scorecard in August. Exports up 46% since January. Production up 27%. Rodriguez earned some of that. On the 30th of January, she signed a hydrocarbons law reform. That law ended PDVSA's monopoly over joint ventures. It reversed a core tenet of Chavismo. Her own PDVSA chief executive had set the target early. Grow, he said, by at least 18%. Venezuela has beaten that pace. But hold on to one number, because it decides everything that follows. Rystad Energy estimates that Venezuela needs $53 billion over 15 years simply to hold production flat. Flat. Not growing. Just standing still at 1.1 million barrels. Going beyond 1.4 million costs far more. That needs $8 to $9 billion every single year out to 2040. Now ask yourself a simple question. Which oil major commits that kind of capital to a government whose legal mandate lasts 90 days at a time? Here is the piece of luck nobody in Caracas planned. In late February, the United States and Israel went to war with Iran. Iran disrupted the Strait of Hormuz. That single choke point normally carries around 20 million barrels a day. Millions of those barrels vanished from the market. Brent crude touched $140 in March. It settled near $94 on the 21st of August. The Energy Information Administration now expects Brent to average about $87 across this year. Think about what that means for Venezuela. Venezuelan Mary crude sells at a steep discount. But that discount now applies to a far higher benchmark. Every optimistic Venezuelan projection you have read rests on that premium. And the same agency expects Middle East production to return near pre-conflict levels in early 2027. So here is where Venezuela actually stands. Its public finances depend on a war it does not fight, in a region it does not touch. A settlement in the Gulf would cut its revenue sharply. Caracas has no say in when that happens. Now we come back to that worker in Caracas. Venezuela froze its legal minimum wage in March 2022. It set the figure at 130 bolívares. That number has not moved since. Today it buys about 27 cents a month. Rodriguez has not raised the legal wage once. Instead, her government expanded bonuses, indexed to the dollar. On the 1st of May, she raised what they call the integrated minimum income. The new figure is $240 a month. That combines a $200 economic war bonus and a $40 food voucher. It replaced $190, a rise of about 26%. That sounds like progress, and in cash terms, it is. But listen to what a bonus is, legally. Bonuses are not wages. Venezuelan law treats them entirely differently. They do not count toward pensions. They do not count toward severance. They do not count toward holiday pay or Social Security. The frozen 130 Bolivar base still calculates every one of those entitlements. Which brings us back to where we started. A contractual Christmas bonus worth 3 months of wages pays roughly $1. University lecturers rejected the May adjustment for exactly this reason. They argue that the state is dismantling wages rather than raising them. In April, riot police pushed back workers protesting in Caracas. And the cost of living? A basic food basket runs between $645 and $700 a month. So the new income covers roughly a third of the food bill. Then, on the 24th of June, 2 earthquakes struck, magnitude 7.2 and 7.5. They killed more than 5,000 people. The UN Development Program estimates $6.7 billion of direct damage. Reconstruction, according to the Caracas consultancy Ecoanalítica, will need 12 to 15 billion. That equals nearly 80% of what the Venezuelan state expects to earn in a year. There is a lesson in the disaster literature that we think applies here. Chile took a magnitude 8.8 earthquake in 2010. Damage ran to 18% of its economy. It recovered inside 4 years. Haiti took a weaker earthquake the same year. Losses reached 120% of its economy. Haiti never really escaped it. The difference was not seismology. The difference was institutions. Chile had fiscal reserves and agencies that worked. Haiti had neither. Venezuela sits between the two. Its damage runs at around 10% of the economy. But its institutions look a great deal more like Haiti's than Chile's. Inflation had been falling. It reached an 18-month low in May. Then the earthquakes hit. The state started spending, and prices went the other way. In July alone, prices rose almost 20%. Annual inflation reached 580%, the highest in Latin America by a factor of 15. So where does this go? We see three plausible paths, and we want to be clear that we do not know which one wins. Path 1. The windfall holds. Output clears 1.3 million barrels. Gulf prices stay elevated. Reconstruction money arrives, the Bolivar steadies, and real incomes finally start climbing. Path 2. The windfall fades. Hormuz reopens. Brent falls toward the mid-60s. Venezuela's revenue collapses before its investment cycle even begins. The barrels stay in the ground because nobody funds the upgraders. Path 3. Washington changes its mind. A different Congress, or a different president, reopens the custodial arrangement. Democrats have already asked the Government Accountability Office to audit it. Notice what all three have in common. Every one of them runs through Washington. Not one runs through Caracas. Delcy Rodríguez controls production. She controls appointments. She controls the security forces. She does not control the two variables that decide her economy. Those variables are the price of oil and the American election calendar. There is one lever Washington has not yet pulled, and we find it revealing. Venezuela has roughly $5 billion sitting at the International Monetary Fund. Special drawing rights, frozen since 2019. Rodríguez wants that money badly. Washington has not released it. The Council on Foreign Relations argues that America should trade it, release the funds in exchange for real democratic steps. So far, no such bargain exists. There is no published roadmap at all. Meanwhile, Venezuela has scheduled no election. Rodríguez governs on a court mandate, renewed 90 days at a time. Diego Area, at the Atlantic Council, reads her cooperation as survival rather than conviction. She wants a system stable enough to protect her after power. Maria Corina Machado won the Nobel Peace Prize last year. She still cannot stand for office, and she lives in exile. Her argument is simple. Stability without legitimacy will not hold. We will leave you with the sentence we kept returning to while we reported this. Venezuela's macro recovery is real. Its household recovery has not started. The distance between those two facts is the Rodríguez era, so far. 4 things we are watching, and you can watch them too. The weekly Bolivar rate, which moves before prices do. The KPMG audits, if they ever appear. Whether Washington unlocks Venezuela's $5 billion at the IMF. And signed drilling contracts, not ministerial announcements. Announcements are cheap. The full article is at veritaseuropea.com, with every figure linked to its source. Free, no paywall. If you want the next one in your inbox, leave us your email. This has been the Veritas Brief. Thank you for giving us 20 minutes.